Ash Ketchum was not the only irresponsible kid sent out from Pallet Town.
You're the fourth to leave home, but as a trainer, you're dead last.
And even though we know absolutely nothing about two of them, I can still safely say that Ash was the worst of the bunch, and Gary was clearly the best.
Mr. Gary to you.
So to show some love for the OG rival, I have modded this version of Pokemon Fire Red to play through it as Gary, doing my best to follow the small amount of information we have about Gary's journey in the show. Before we begin, what is your favorite Gary moment? Here is mine.
Sometimes I wonder why I was cursed with this talent.
Because I can totally relate to that. Unlike that loser, Ash, I don't waste time playing stupid kid games. I, Gary Oak, am ready to be a Pokemon master. Ash gets here late, so Grandpappy allows me to get the first Pokemon. Or rather, the only Pokemon, because the others were already taken. Ash decided that he wants a Squirtle, which is just too bad because I get it first.
But I finally decided to choose Squirtle. No!
Already taken by someone who was on time.
Leaving a grumpy Pikachu for him. We decide to try out our Pokemon, which is remarkably unfair because he wins in 2 Thunder Shocks, which certainly does not happen in the show. At no point throughout Kanto does Ash beat Gary. Granted, they have like one whole fight, but still. Oak gives each of us a Pokedex and some Pokeballs, and decides to live vicariously through us, because he is now too old to leave the house. Which is the real reason I'm going on a Pokemon journey, to get away from my overbearing grandpa who can't even remember my name. In Viridian Forest, I render a hardening Metapod completely useless through the expert use of special attacking bubbles. This samurai has no idea what hit him, but since Ash doesn't know what he's doing, I'm sure his battle isn't nearly as exciting. Speaking of, let's head to Brock, the first gym leader. Since I get here before Ash, he is still here in the gym, doing his job, instead of gallivanting across all of Kanto like a love-stricken fool. My reputation precedes me because I am just that good. I didn't even bother to heal or get to the level cap of this so-called battle. A single drop of water drowns the Geodude, though Onix does outspeed, doing a whopping 2 damage to Paul. He then falls to some water. Well, that was way too easy. Where was the challenge here? And if you want to see more challenge videos that apparently aren't all that challenging, then subscribe to the channel for more awesome content like this. After beating up some bug catchers, Paul gets to evolve. Unlike Ash, I actually let all of my Pokemon get stronger. Cuteness is overrated, which is why, after catching my second Pokemon, Trip immediately evolves. Now, in this game, you can get a Nidoking stupid early, but to not overshadow Ash too much with my awesome Pokemon, I've decided to wait on fully evolving him, at least for a while. In Mount Moon, I find and catch a Geodudette named Bee. Hopefully you can see the naming scheme by now. In Cerulean, Misty is off getting her bike destroyed, so her sisters have taken over the gym. And this gym battle is against Misty's sister, Daisy, who is 100% not a recolored version of a beauty trainer. How dare you suggest that? I have no idea what Pokemon these sisters used against Gary, but I do know some of the Pokemon that they have. So Not Misty starts with a Seal. Paul takes very little from the Seal's attacks, and Bite does okay. Not great, but okay. After a few bites, Paul starts to withdraw in preparation for the next Pokemon. After defense boosts, Not Misty heals, and Paul needs to keep on biting. He eventually eats the Seal, but his HP is a bit lower than I would have liked, because next up is a Sea King, and this fish has decently high attack. But thanks to my increased defense, Horn Attack does about the same amount as Bubble Beam, which is just enough to make Paul not finish the job. At this HP, he could survive a non-crit, but let's not risk it. Trip takes 2 Bubble Beams and defeats the Girl King with a single kick. I didn't lose anybody, which is great, but why were they so tough? After all, when faced with Ash as a challenger, these girls immediately gave in and tried to just hand him the badge.
Thanks. I'd rather earn my badges.
Take it. A badge is a badge.
Which is probably why Ash is so weak, to be honest. He keeps getting badges handed to him without actually earning them. And speaking of weaklings, here he is. Ash has barely gotten any new Pokemon too. What a loser. Bee makes quick work of Pidgeotto, and would have done the same to Butterfree if it weren't for Sleep Powder. That's fine though, because Paul easily tanks the confusions, and even with a paralysis, chomps on that Butterfly. B makes a return to give Pikachu a false sense of security with those double teams, and then hits a magnitude 9 first try, even though she's groggy from just waking up. What'd I tell ya? Ash is always going to be worse than me. Even if he does get better episodes, like the giant Dragonite at Bill's lighthouse, that is never mentioned again. Still bummed about that weird mystery. It's at this point that Gary is revealed to have caught 45 Pokémon.
45 Pokemon?
Gotcha.
Which is awesome, but I only have 3 at the moment because we don't really know all of the different species he caught. I'm only using the ones we specifically saw Gary use in the original anime. At Bill's house, I don't see any cool Dragonites here, but I do get a ticket to the SS Anne, something the real Gary did not get. But Gary loves nothing more than being pampered.
I earned so many badges already, I'm taking a break to work on my tan.
He's so cool.
So a cruise to rest from my arduous Pokemon journey sounds just right. The loser Ash, though, somehow also got invited, as if he were a strong enough trainer or something. After our last battle, Ash went and got 3 new Pokemon, so perhaps this will be a minor challenge. His bird is rock thrown once again by B. After taking a Metal Claw, she swaps with Paul, who uses a single Water Pulse on Charmander. Trip takes a few Bulbasaur Razor Leaves, but gets a 2-hit KO with Peck. Anticipating a super effective Confusion, Paul comes back out only to get paralyzed again, just like last time. 2 Water Pulses connect, taking out Butterfree. B comes out again to one-shot Pikachu with Magnitude. Then Paul makes his final return to bite his younger but inarguably cooler little brother. Ash tells me how to get cut and then decides to skip town before this boat starts to sink, and he winds up at an island full of giant Pokemon or something random like that. Following Ash's advice, I do get cut, but I'm forced to undergo a traumatic experience first. Was it really worth it? Around this time, there are several instances where I get bothered by Ash's mere presence. First, he rudely stands in my way as I am trying to have a shopping spree. This is the same episode he gets a Squirtle because he's trying to mimic my power. In Beauty and the Beach, Gary actually meets Misty for the first time and uses this opportunity to insult Ash in front of an entire crowd of beauty pageant contestants.
Ash, I know you're out there in the crowd somewhere, but I didn't come here to make you jealous of me, Ash. I came here so some of my beautiful fan club members could make you jealous of me.
Gary, he's our man. He'll trash Ash, we know he can.
Thank you, fans. Great cheer. I wrote that one myself, Ashy.
Ash does not belong here, and Gary needs to make sure that everyone knows.
I'm not gonna let you stand up here in front of all these people and insult me like that. I challenge you to a battle right now.
I'd love to, but I only brought my fans with me.
This is one of those episodes that was not dubbed in the original Western release because of certain awkward inflatables, shall we say. Nobody needed to see that, James. Last and certainly least, a number of Pokemon trainers were hired by the Gaiva Dam construction crew to clear out some Diglets. I was obviously their first choice, and Ash was not nearly strong enough to be a part of it. But Ash isn't the only loser here. The foreman who hired us has no idea what he's talking about.
Diglett, the greatest parasitic bug Pokemon of the century!
Just a minute. Technically, Diglett is not a bug Pokemon. As a matter of fact, the term mole Pokemon would be more appropriate. With a height of 8 inches and a weight of 2 pounds, they're hardly candidates to be called the greatest anything of this century.
My Pokemon refuse to battle these Diglett, probably because they are so weak and wouldn't give any real experience anyway.
They won't come out. For some reason, the Pokemon don't want to battle the Diglett.
Before leaving, I once again point out that Ash is an idiot.
You're the 4th to leave home, but as a trainer, you're dead last.
Gary, he comes through when others choke. Are they Pokemon? No!
Don't be dumb!
And so is this foreman for trying to play Whack-A-Diglett.
That won't work. Diglett can pull their heads in at 186,282 miles per second.
What's that?
The speed of light.
I bet you never realized Diglett were that impressive, now did you? I, of course, know absolutely everything about this random Pokemon for some reason. But to show that my Pokemon have overcome their soft-hearted natures, I enter Diglett's cave, find a mole Pokemon, and wreck him with Paul's Water Pulse. That's how the fight was supposed to go. For Lieutenant Surge, I changed his team to match what he used in the anime, at least against Ash. Either way, B makes quick work of this Raichu, getting 2 magnitudes for the knockout. That was again way too easy to be a gym battle. Before heading to Rock Tunnel, I need to show off my method of transportation. Some people, like Ash, just have to walk around all of Kanto. Others have a bike so they can go a bit faster. I, on the other hand, have a car with a full entourage of followers. That's the real secret to my success. Driving is so much better than walking. I know that sprite looks like crap, I just did it for a quick gimmick. Give me a break. On the other side of Rock Tunnel, which does not exist in the show, I search this grass patch for a Growlithe. After hitting a single tackle, that fire dog roars me away. I should have seen that coming, I suppose. And he had Intimidate too. At least I can get another chance east of Celadon. This time I do get one, but now he's more cute than intimidating. That's too bad. Since his bark is worse than his bite, let's call him Barry. On the other side of Celadon, I catch Doduo. Last in this encounter barrage, I steal a little Eevee from the top of a random building. Welcome to the team, Richie. I've been looking forward to meeting you. Before leaving Celadon, I made a change to the game corner and put Scizor as a prize now instead of Scyther. This is because in the Silver Conference, Gary used a Scizor. I had every intention of getting one, but decided at the last minute to stick with Gary's Kanto Pokemon, for the most part, so no thank you, Scizor. Now that I finally have a team of 6 Pokemon, I return to Lavender and can have a full 6v6 battle with Ash. His team is basically the same as last time, with a minor change. Pidgeotto and Charmander are both rock slid by B, Paul and Squirtle take turns biting each other, but with how much smack talk Paul dishes out, his jaw is remarkably strong. Barry is temporarily put to sleep by Bulbasaur, but he recovers that soon enough. Primeape is a bit concerning, especially after a Focus Energy. I was kind of hoping that I would burn him. Oh well. Trip can mostly take these karate chops, and after some poison and pecks, defeats the angry monkey. This leaves Pikachu, but as we saw a few minutes ago, magnituding electric rodents is B's speciality, so it's not really a concern. After my win, Ash temporarily speaks in Leet, or something, because that just looks weird. Turns out, I used the wrong type of slash on accident when changing the text here. I do fix it, but I didn't want to bother going through that battle again. Turns out that Ash is at the Pokemon Tower in search of a ghost Pokemon to help him defeat Sabrina, which only kind of makes sense. Yes, Ghost is super effective against Psychic, but also the only ghost Pokemon in Kanto are weak to Psychic, so it's not a great trade-off. But I don't really care what that loser is up to. I have another badge to win, this time against Erica. And to make this challenge, I did not have to dress up like a girl, already doing better than Ash. Elaine the Doduo starts with a pursuit against Victory Bell because I misclicked and meant to use Fly. After actually using Fly, he is paralyzed, heals with a berry, and a few more hits defeats this failed Fly trap. Tangela falls in a single Fly. Vileplume does manage to stun Spore again and hit with an Acid, but a simple Fly Peck combo defeats that flower. And yet again, I win a badge that Ash Ketchum was simply handed for being the protagonist. Infiltrating Rocket's Game Corner HQ, I find a Moonstone and decide that 4 badges is enough. Let's allow Trip to fully evolve. Again, I could have done that prior to not Misty, but I didn't want this run to be too easy. Gary already has access to a solid Pokemon team after all. Since I'm here, I might as well show the battle against Giovanni, even though this does not happen in the show. A few magnitudes from B takes out his Onix. Kangaskhan has the special attacking move Bite, so let's bring out the newly evolved Trip. Kangaskhan is kicked a few times right in the face, and Rhyhorn is kicked a few more times until he stops trying to get up, defeating Team Rocket once and for all. I'm sure they'll never come back. Until I head to Silphco, that is. But first, it's an evolution fest. Paul, Barry, and B all evolve as I'm making my way through this rocket-infested building. Towards the end here, I discover Ash, who has a long and checkered history of defeating Team Rocket. This battle is as straightforward and simple as the previous one. More so actually, because none of his Pokemon have evolved, so I make quick work of all of his team, with the exception of Primeape. This guy is still a big concern. Trip deals some damage and poisons him, but is at risk of falling to a crit. I pivot to Paul to stall with a Protect, which ends up being a waste as Primeape focuses his Chi. Thankfully, he uses Seismic Toss, which can't crit, so no worries there. Oh, and I guess Ash still had a tiny little Charmander who can't stand up to the Water Pulse. Can't believe this thing has not yet evolved. This brings me directly to Giovanni, who, again, Gary did not meet at this point in the show. B makes quick work of Nidorino, but thanks to a few relatively weak magnitudes, Nidoqueen survives and puts my queen at risk, so Paul uses Water Pulse. For Kangaskhan, Trip has learned Brick Break, which is a bit weaker than I had hoped, to be honest, but 3 hits is still enough as he gets crit by a Rage. Then Rhyhorn is Water Pulsed. Man, this Giovanni guy better get some awesome, never before seen Pokemon before the next battle, or he won't stand a chance. Ash had to go out and get a ghost Pokemon for this Sabrina fight, but I have a little trick up my sleeve in the form of Umbreon. I know, I said I would use mostly his Kanto Pokemon, but it's impossible for me to get an Eevee and not evolve it. And I have to use Umbreon because that's who Gary had. Of course, Richie makes this fight a little bit too easy. After all, Venomoth is the only Pokemon Sabrina has who can actually hit him. Bury the Arcanine, Flame Wheels that Moth, time and time and time again, until she finally no longer has any healing items. Since he's already here, he might as well bite the Mr. Mime too. Alakazam may not be able to hurt Richie, but he can spam Calm Mind, making Feint Attack super weak. Instead, Richie swaps to using Confusion and Quick Attack for the win, marking yet another time I actually won a badge that was simply given to Ash out of pity. On my way to Fuchsia City, I decide to call up my entourage once again, riding this car down Bike Path. Now, driving in the bike lane may not seem like a safe thing to do, but it's their fault for being in the way. I am the protagonist after all. I drive my car all the way to the Safari Zone, where I'm prepared to hunker down and search for a Nidoran girl as long as it takes. She is a 5% encounter here, after all, and it takes like a minute. Everything is always so easy for Gary. It's like the universe just gives him things. I even have enough steps to find some old dude's chompers. Just what I've always wanted. Korrina skates up in level and evolves twice in quick succession. She even learns Superpower as a Nidoqueen, which is something I did not realize she would learn. So that's cool. Too bad I just missed out on the Body Slam. Koga only uses 2 Pokemon in his fight with Ash, so let's do the same here. He starts with a Venomoth, who Elaine, the now Dodrio, simply one-shots with a Fly. Golbat does survive the Tri-Attack a couple of times, thanks to Heal, but even with a Toxic, Elaine proves too strong for this supposed ninja. Aren't ninjas supposed to be good fighters? Because Koga certainly was not. Before hitting up the next gym, I take a break and decide to participate in the Great Fossil Rush, where it's only a matter of time until I make a remarkable discovery.
Impressive, isn't it? Found it on my first try. Looks like a brain from an extinct Pokemon.
This is...
A brain?
It's fossilized Pokemon manure.
Huh?
Well, anyway, I do see an Aerodactyl, but mysteriously fall asleep. And then the powers that be attempt to pretend this never happened, per usual.
Some of you are claiming that you saw a prehistoric Pokemon here in the canyon. That is ridiculous. Let me assure you it was only a dream caused by Jigglypuff's song.
On the way to Cinnabar, Ash and friends naively think they can just waltz on up here and get another gym badge.
Cinnabar Island doesn't even have a Pokemon gym.
Gary knows it all.
What do you mean? It's gotta have a gym.
Well, you can believe what you want to, but you'll see for yourself.
But the Cinnabar gym has been closed for years. This is just a tourist attraction now, so let's relax and listen to some music. After waking up with some weird markings on my face, I encounter a Magmar in the burned down Pokemon Mansion. I doubt I'll use him much this late in the game, but Gary did have one. And I know I gave Ash a hard time here, but after he leaves, I sneak into the secret gym he discovered to face Blaine, though he is a complete pushover. Paul starts by surfing his Ninetales. Blaine actually has a non-fire Pokemon in Rhydon, but he's still weak to water, so not a great compliment to his fire types. Magmar is similarly drowned. So yeah, super simple once again. No wonder Gary has 10 badges the next time he meets up with Ash. These gyms aren't even a challenge. I deserve 2 badges for how easily I destroyed Blaine. And even though I don't need another badge, I love to show off my strength. And what better way to do that than to face down Giovanni? Again.
I'm Gary Oak from Pallet, and I hereby request a battle with the leader of this gym.
Let's go! This'll be cool! Gary will win again, like he always does. Oh.
This gym battle is actually the only Gary one that is, more or less, fully shown in the anime, so I can make Giovanni's team match. First is his golem. This giant rock uses tackle against Nidoking, and somehow Gary's Nidoking wins with his own tackle. Rather than use a stupid normal attack, Trip utilizes his versatility to surf the giant rock. Giovanni's Kingler is defeated by Arcanine's Fire Blast. Anime logic, am I right? But I use the much safer method of Thunderbolts with Trip. Up till this point, this is yet another simple gym battle, until Giovanni brings out his ace, the Armored Mewtwo. This psychic Pokemon defeats both Arcanine and Nidoking at the same time, because he's a freaking Mewtwo. And after defeating Gary's Pokemon without breaking a sweat, I guess Mewtwo uses Psychic on Gary too? And his entire fan club? Wow. But you may have noticed that Gary only used 2 Pokemon in that battle, while Giovanni used 3, meaning I can pick a 3rd Pokemon to use. So after protecting on the Psychic, I pivot to Richie, the Umbreon. But to make this more difficult, I gave this Mewtwo Brick Break, so immediately I pivot back to Trip. He protects again, and then swaps to Richie again. Basically, I'm trying to PP stall out his Psychic. My plans change ever so slightly though, as Trip's Poison Point is activated. Anticipating a heal, Trip uses Shadow Ball that crits, almost but not quite, one-shotting Mewtwo. Anticipating another heal, this is a bit of a risk here, Trip Shadow Balls again, and this time lowers Mewtwo's special defense. With that unexpected development, the next time Richie comes out, rather than run away to a Brick Break, he stays in to use a Feint Attack. If Richie were 2 levels higher, he would know Moonlight, and this whole charade would not have been necessary. But without that defense drop, Feint Attack would not have been a 3-hit KO, and Mewtwo would have just healed, so I needed a different strategy. Either way, Feint Attack is now strong enough to defeat the most powerful Pokemon in Kanto. What's really unfair about this battle is that after Gary goes out of his way to warn Ash about this incredibly strong Pokemon, Ash just has to defeat Team Rocket to get this badge. So yeah, that's lame. Even though Ash has gotten stronger, he still needs me to jump in and save the day.
Huh. I hate to admit it, but that kid's a pretty good trainer.
Typical pathetic Ash. And speaking of that loser, we have another encounter before the Indigo League starts. B rock throws Pidgeotto, Paul bites his younger kin, B returns to Earthquake the Pikachu, Gladion makes his debut to flamethrow the Grass Dino, and last, Paul surfs on the Charizard. After my victory, I quickly put some distance between us so I don't catch his loseritis. It's very contagious.
Let's go, girls. If I stay here much longer, I might catch loseritis and miss the competition. See ya!
Gary, he's the top! Till he wins, he never stops!
Now it's on to the Indigo League. We don't see much about Gary's battles here, because for whatever reason, the writers thought that Ash was the main character instead of Gary. But we do see that he wins the first round battle on the ice field.
Gary, how are you feeling about your first win?
Well, naturally, winning your first battle is always important. Of course, in every Pokemon match, there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser. And the trainers I know are real losers.
Watches some of Ash's fights.
Just look at him. He wins 2 easy matches and he's acting like he won the whole competition.
And then loses abruptly on a 4th round battle. But it wasn't his fault. You see, the sun was in his eyes and there was too much noise going on, it was hard to focus.
That trainer was lucky that I got distracted by all the girls cheering for me.
Either way, I didn't really like the way they dropped my boy Gary, so in these Elite Four battles, I'm going to make it up for him. We start with Paul, who brick breaks the Dugong. Eventually. I thought it would be a 2-hit KO, and that healing kinda doesn't help. With that Cloyster's insane defense, Surf is actually a better option here, even if it's not very effective. Though with Hail and double protects, Paul is getting hammered. Richie comes out on slow bro to get yawned, confuses that bro, wakes up, and gets a crit feint attack. The Lapras-Richie battle is quite long and drawn out. We both confuse each other, and Richie eventually uses Toxic. Lapras is healed with full restore, and Richie with Moonlight. But eventually, he gets another crit feint attack for the knockout. Last is Jinx, who does put Richie to sleep 2 whole times, but he quickly wakes up and knocks out the Ice Psychic Pokemon in just a few hits. The Ice Field battle is now done. On to Bruno. Trip uses his unique combination of special and physically attacking moves to surf the 2 Onixes and Earthquake the Hitmonchan. Machamp uses his turn to bulk up, slows down Trip, and does quite a bit more damage than I am comfortable with. Anticipating a heal, I pivot to Barry to flamethrower a few times and get a lucky crit. With those 2 bulk ups, a crit cross chop would easily have taken out Barry. Barry runs away to Paul on a Rock Tomb, who also takes a decent chunk of damage from Hitmonchan's Sky Uppercut. Bruno gave me much more trouble than I was expecting, which is weird because he's always so ridiculously easy. This brings us to Old Lady Agatha, who some people claim is my great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, you know, because she's so old. But let me put this theory to rest. There is no way someone as attractive as I am could possibly be related to this old bat. Just look at her. Trip starts this battle with a Shadow Ball on the Gengar, but fails to get the kill. After missing several times, thanks to a double team, and getting himself confused, it's time for Richie to do the job with his feint attack. I pivot to B, only for the Golbat to immediately confuse her. I don't think it's a big deal, because Golbat can barely hurt her at all. But it turns out that B is her own worst nightmare. She hits herself 3 times in a row because of that confusion, and I really should have swapped out earlier because I ran the risk of losing her here. But I just got so frustrated at what should have been a simple Rock Slide knockout that I tempted fate a bit. It eventually worked out, and she won, though not unscathed by any means. She soaks up Arbok's Intimidate, allowing Trip to come back out to Earthquake. He outspeeds to one-shot Haunter, but immediately falls asleep on the second Gengar. I could have sworn I had given him a Chesto Berry. After taking a couple of hits and doing some damage, Richie returns to heal with a Lum Berry and then feint attacks. That fight also didn't go as well as I had hoped. What's going on with this run right now? The gym battles were all so easy. Hopefully, the Lance battle goes well. I start off strong as Trip thunderbolts Gyarados. Next is Aerodactyl, but a few Surfs is more than enough to take him out. For the Dragonite, Paul comes out on an Outrage and fails to one-shot with an Ice Beam. Not gonna lie, I did not do a calculation there because I just assumed the 4 times effective Ice move would be enough. Great job, Paul, failing at the end of the conference just like your namesake. Barry is paralyzed on the swap, but manages to not only hit this Dragonair with 2 extreme speeds, but does the same with the second Dragonair, not getting fully paralyzed a single time. I'm surprised that Barry is the one who came in clutch of all people. But it's not over yet. Because of plot armor and other such nonsense, Ash actually ended up doing better than me in the Indigo Conference. But I cannot let that stand. I refuse to be beaten by this guy. But to give him a fighting chance, I have changed his team to give him his full Kanto potential. That means he actually starts off with Lapras from his Orange Island adventures. Like the previous Lapras Umbreon battle, this takes some time, with me poisoning him and getting frozen in return. Though Richie eventually does win. He then Toxics and confuses the Blastoise that Ash certainly could have gotten had he properly trained his Squirtle. With that poison damage, my own Blastoise can come on out and teach that guy what a true cannon turtle can do. This baits out Pikachu. Now, it's not really relevant here because he never gets a chance to use it, but I did give this Pika a Light Ball because evolving him just felt wrong. Regardless, B makes short work of this Pikachu. Next is Venusaur. I don't actually blame Ash for not getting one of these, because Bulbasaur is the one who refused to evolve in the first place, so it's not entirely Ash's fault. Anyway, Bayer uses 2 flamethrowers to take it out. Now it's on to Snorlax, another Orange Island Pokemon. Bea comes out to tank several body slams, and whittles away at his HP with Earthquake. The only problem is, Ash has a ton of full restores. Stupid plot armor. Eventually, I have to pivot to Trip, and Snorlax then decides to rest healing all the freaking damage I did. I take that chance to swap to Paul, who still has Brick Break, to once and for all defeat this fat guy. Last is one of the few Pokemon I didn't change, Charizard. He gets a crit Aerial Ace, but falls to a single Surf from Paul, thus clinching my final victory over Ash. Which is not all that surprising. At almost every point in the original show, Gary was ahead of Ash, until they eventually meet at the Silver Conference and become friends once again. But that's not important right now. All that matters here is that I have a strong suspicion that Oak, my own apparent grandfather, favors Ash over me. Or at the very least, he gives him more of his time. But whatever. Who needs you, old man? I am the Kanto Champion now. After taking a break during the Orange Island arc, Gary makes a return to defeat Ash in a 1v1 using his Eevee, and then he heads to the Johto region to continue being a thorn in Ash's side. So I'll likely do a similar run in Johto, just to see how Gary does there. But if this was any indication, it'll be smooth sailing. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe, leave a like and a comment, and I'll see you in the next region.